This is the
Five Stars
Podcast.
Let me talk to you. This is such good shit.
And we are back again, bringing you the Friday edition of the Five Starr Wrestling Report podcast. Welcome to the show, people, new and returning viewers alike. If it is your first time checking out the show, we are here every Monday and Friday on YouTube and Rumble. Make sure you subscribe, comment, and rate the show below for me. Each Friday, we bring you coverage of AEW Dynamite, and we focus the remainder of the show on our retro series reporting, which at the moment we are running down the archives of NWA World Championship Wrestling from 1985 on the TBS Superstation. Having a ball with that one right now. And we are also covering World Class Championship Wrestling from 1982. And if that is something that appeals to you, more older school pro wrestling fans out there, make sure you stop by each Friday for the retro series reporting. Monday show, we normally bring you recaps of AEW Rampage, NWA Power, and depending on the week, we either cover weekend pay-per-views or article opinion pieces of mine, which I am currently writing for the Chairshot. If you head on over to www.chairshot.com, or as always, you can check the description box. I will always have my most recent publication posted there for easy access. Definitely go check out my content if you get the chance. For this coming Monday show, we actually will not be delving into any article content, as we will actually use Monday's show as a sort of extension of the retro series when we talk about Starrcade 85 in great detail, which should be a lot of fun for me. One of, I believe the very first pro wrestling pay-per-views I think I actually saw top to bottom and have vague memories of actually watching in real time. And I've not actually gone back and watched a replay of that show in well over 15 years by this point. So it'll be a good refresher just seeing how things stack up years after the fact. But again, that is for Monday's show. Today, as per usual, for the Friday edition, we are going to be taking a look at AEW Dynamite from November 24th, then continuing along in the retro review series by going over NWA World Championship Wrestling and World Class. And we will begin by going over Dynamite from Wednesday night, the Thanksgiving edition of the show. By the way, happy belated Thanksgiving to y'all turkey eaters out there. And if people are still not petrified of the bug and plan on partaking in the Black Friday shopping sales of death, I wish you all the best of luck, and for the love of God, please be safe. A lot of crazy idiots out there. Opening match for the night was supposed to be CM Punk versus QT Marshall, but instead we got MJF interrupting to perhaps try and redeem himself after getting pretty much shunned on last week's show. Which, by the way, that Punk MJF exchange from last week was still probably my favorite thing Punk has done since his return promo this past summer. And, well, he'd not quite go through with my idea of doing the Punk troll build-up. And after watching the back and forth between these two here, it's kind of a bittersweet moment. Actually, I think one of my favorite lines in this whole thing was right at the beginning when Punk got like 2 words in, MJF got like 2 words in before the crowd started chanting, "Shut the fuck up." And of all possible ways that you would think a smartass like MJF would come up with to retort to them, he just casually goes, "No." Aside from that, this was a pretty straightforward paint-by-numbers MJF Heat promo. Threw in some dialogue there about Punk being straight edge, yet he always has a look like he was a meth addict. Talked about how Punk was always the big fish in the small pond when it came to stick work, but with MJF in the fold now, Punk is a minnow in comparison. Said that he resents Punk for never mentioning him among the group of young guys that he wanted to wrestle when he showed up. Punk ends up telling him that the reason he never brought him up in the media is because he did not want to feed MJF's already overinflated ego. Ended up tossing in a jab about MJF being a low-rent Miz knockoff, which sadly I think MJF missed a golden opportunity to actually fire back with something clever like, actually no, that's where you're wrong, because unlike Miz, I can actually wrestle. But instead, MJF calls Punk a walking nostalgia trip, calls him a kiss ass, says he's one step closer to preaching hustle, loyalty, respect, and it was right around this point where I started to feel this segment dragged. And listen, I don't want to take away from the dialogue here. I know people were raving up a storm about how great this promo exchange was, and there was a lot of great stuff in this promo, and MJF is leaps and bounds above like 99% of any young talent in the business today, especially when it comes to that 5-tool system I talk about. In fact, I would actually go on record saying that I thought MJF came off a lot better than Punk did in this promo. But, like, I'm watching these guys go back and forth, and eventually MJF started doing a Punk impersonation, and then he kept rambling about Punk's failed comic book writing and UFC career, and then he's eventually talking about how Punk was never the top guy, and, you know, he was always overshadowed by Cena and Hunter, and it's like, okay, I think we get the point here. This was approximately 2 to 3 weeks worth of promos and video package discourse, all wrapped up in a ball of about 20 minutes, and it felt a little overbearing. I'm already kind of iffy on AEW constantly mentioning WWE, like, be it outright or underhandedly. It's the same shit I used to bitch about TNA doing this 10 years ago, where it always felt like they had a superiority complex over WWE, like, despite the actuality of the circumstances they were facing at the time. AEW tries to walk that fine line to take shots at the other company without being so forthright. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. MJF talking about how Punk was always inferior to the big players on the other brand, I don't think that came across as they intended. Because now they're essentially letting casual viewers of the station know, yeah, Punk was never good enough to be the top guy in the big leagues, and now he's here in AEW because he couldn't make the cut. And like, while I personally may see it differently, you know, because I've followed Punk's career, but you can understand how fans that haven't followed his career since the beginning could see it the other way. And again, I know I'm talking about this in a realm of casual versus hardcore fans, and AEW really doesn't have much of an interest in appealing to casual mainstream fans. But as I've constantly said from the beginning, if this company is actually looking to grow their audience and grow their fan base, these are the kinds of things that they need to consider. And I'm thinking from a casual fan's perspective. So CM Punk wrestled in another bigger company and was never a bigger deal, but now I'm supposed to take him seriously and this company is a big deal. I don't know. Like I said, there was some good stuff here, and I think MJF totally outclassed Punk in every way imaginable, but they said a lot of stuff. Some of it hit home well, some of it didn't, and overall, it just felt like a lot of material to consume in one sitting. Like, if they had spread this out over, say, 2 to 3 weeks, done the interviews in separate locations via sit-downs or pre-tapes, it might have been easier to digest by breaking this up over a span of time. But to try and pack it all into one 20-minute promo segment, I don't think it worked. But that's just me. Anyway, we did get the Punk QT match after the break, and I've got to at least give one AEW official credit. That Paul Turner guy ejecting QT's goons after them trying to run interference one time on the outside, he immediately has more credibility than Bryce Remsburg and fucking Rick Knox, who most weeks just let guys run interference left and right while they stand there beating themselves off in the middle of the ring. So, good on Paul there. Match was alright, I guess. Again, Punk's newfound gimmick during his matches is popping the crowd by doing multiple series of body slams, which somehow has gotten over. I have no idea how, other than the fact that he's CM Punk. But it was weird too, because for a lot of the match, JR kept bringing up the fact that this is clearly not Punk's best in-ring performance, all the while proving MJF's point about how Punk has been struggling to come in and plow through all the undercard geeks, and at the same time making you realize that among these talents that Punk has struggled to convincingly defeat, now you add QT Marshall to that list. And I've talked about this before, how professional wrestling has really gotten away from the traditional formula of how to actually do proper squash matches. Instead of just letting guys go in there and you're trying to spotlight one specific guy, so you have him kick the other guy's ass for a few minutes, get over his offense, give him a clean TV win, move on with the show. Every enhancement match now needs to be 50-50, where the job guy or the undercard guy has to get his shit in before he gets beaten. I don't understand it personally, and I especially don't see why it needs to take Punk over 10 minutes to beat a guy like QT Marshall of all people, but whatever, I'm not booking it. So after that, we had Christian Cage and the Jurassic Express doing a promo where Cage announces that Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy are now the top-ranked team, and he is going to make sure that they become new tag champs. In other words, translation, I am going to make sure that I screw the Jurassic Express over and cost them the belts in some fashion. Oh yeah, and Luchasaurus roared at the end. Love that fucking guy. We had a quick deal with Eddie Kingston and catering, snacking on cake and coffee. And I guess AEW catering literally consists of one area in the back with one table, a few chairs, a large black curtain in the background, and nothing resembling food or actual catering. So much for the big leagues. So again, the gimmick now with AEW is that no one is allowed to do promos or interviews without being interrupted. So who should show up less than 8 seconds into this promo than 2.0 and Daniel Garcia? And the payoff here is 2.0 name drop Moxley. Kingston goes to start a fight. Garcia threw coffee in Kingston's face. They got to do a big pull apart. And there was a part of me that genuinely feared for the life and safety of 2.0 and Garcia. Then we had what I now believe is my new favorite undercard heel faction in AEW. We had the Gun Club in action. And for this one, it was Austin and Billy Gunn taking on Bear Country. Or was it Colton? Yeah, tomato. Match itself was not very good. Bear Country, I don't know. They could probably be a formidable monster team down the road, but they are very green right now and got a lot of work to do in the ring. But, I don't want to dismiss them as completely useless because they got a good look. But after the Gun Club win, Sting comes out to the ramp. One of the Gun Sons attempts to charge up the ramp to try and start a fight. And, of course, Darby came out and pretty much barreled over the other Gun Son. I presume he was pronounced dead upon impact. And while it was not quite as legendary as the Keith Lee crossbody check of doom to Adam Cole, it was still a pretty cool looking spot. And all of this to bring us one step closer to the ultimate dream match of the ages. You know what I'm talking about. Sting versus Billy Gunn, one-on-one, January Clash of the Champions show. The ultimate showcase piece for the young, up-and-coming Sting that will put him on the map as a future main eventer and world champion. Cannot wait. We had quick setup to Adam Cole and Bobby Fish taking on Orange Cassidy and Wheeler Yuta for Rampage, which I am not really all that intrigued about. Then we had one of the strangest out-of-the-blue heel swerves I think I've seen in AEW yet. So I kind of figured that they were going to go with the slow burn tease of Dante being coerced into joining with Team Taz and distancing himself from Lio Rush. Maybe doing like some kind of Shades of Grey deal before flipping him heel altogether. And, well, instead of the slow burn effect, they just went full throttle and had Dante sign the contract to join Team Taz. And then he just left with the heels after taking a piece of candy from Hook. Well, first of all, I laughed, just with how absurd the whole thing came across on television. But, I did say before that if they really want to get Dante over down the road and make him a top priority, the dude needs some work on his personality and character. So, I've been advocating for him to join up with Team Taz in some way, even if it is in the short term. And he's going to get the opportunity to work with Taz and Ricky Starks, might get a chance to do some promo work on television. God forbid he displays actual genuine fire and emotion on camera instead of looking like he's absolutely petrified to be in front of one. In the meantime, he'll actually get a chance to work as a heel in the ring. And, for me, that'll be a real testament to where Dante currently stacks up on that 5-tool chart. Does he have the ability to effectively work both sides of the aisle, both from a character side and in-ring style? He does a lot of impressive athletic stuff as a babyface, but now we'll see if he's able to put some of that on the back burner and really play off the fans who, maybe want to see that kind of high-risk offense from Dante going forward. How can Dante use that against the people to piss them off? Guess we'll see. So then we had Jamie Hayter, I hardly even know her, taking on Thunder Rosa in a TBS tournament qualifying match. There was an oddly comedic part early on in this match where Rosa gave Jamie one of the hardest palm slaps across the face, to which JR's immediate response to this was to nonchalantly inform us that, well, folks, Thunder Rosa does a lot of charity work. As if to say, Rosa is really a truly loving and giving person, just discount that bitch slap that probably rattled Jamie's brain just a second ago. And speaking of Jamie, I will give her credit here because I am a fair man. Jamie didn't look too bad in there. She's very green, and her selling needs a lot of work, but I would say she looked fine with Rosa. And Rosa's fantastic. I cannot say enough good things about her. No questions asked. She absolutely should be the one to be crowned the first TBS champion and win this tournament. Which is why, of course, they'll probably have someone like Jade Cargill win it instead. But, the match was perfectly fine. Nothing looked outrageously awful or clumsy. Even to an extent, I was okay with the finish deal with the heels trying to thwart Rosa 3-on-1, but, Rosa ended up outsmarting them all and rolling up Jamie to beat her anyway. And granted, the visual of Aubrey turning her attention to Rebel for a full minute while Britt was running blatant interference on the other end was completely ridiculous. Especially when you factor in that Aubrey is ideally looking at a giant fucking Jumbotron screen where she can clearly fucking see Britt running interference behind her. But, again, keep in mind, all AEW officials are idiots, so we mustn't be surprised. But, whatever. The match wasn't horrible, the right girl won, and I can only pray to God at this point that they have enough brain power to put the strap on Rosa at the end of it all. Fuck Jade Cargill, fuck her stupid undefeated streak. She sucks in the ring, and she has no business winning a championship with her experience level right now. Rosa's the best worker, she's the best promo, she has the most fan support, and she's the all-around better talent. We had We had more 2.0 and Daniel Garcia, this time with Chris Jericho. And for the life of me, I have no idea why Tony Khan books the way he does with some of these undercard guys. It's like 1 week they are all over the show doing skits and TV matches, and it kind of looks like they're on a verge of getting a big push, and then they're gone for like 6 weeks at a time only to randomly show up in other key storylines. And 2.0 and Garcia have now been on both sides of the spectrum, where they were gone forever, and now they're randomly back feuding with Eddie Kingston and, I guess, Chris Jericho. It was a Jericho promo. You know what you're getting at this point. He just said Matt Lee has a square head. Literally, that was all he said. I am not kidding. We had Britt Baker, Rebel, and Shivani having a turkey dinner and sharing acts of thankfulness. So maybe, in fact, catering is a bigger deal in AEW than I thought. I have no idea who else would have prepped this random turkey dinner that came about. Anyhow, the whole payoff here was Tony playing a videotape of the Casino Battle Royal from the pay-per-view where I guess Riho got dumped out of the ring without going over the top rope or something. So now she's facing Britt on Rampage, and if she wins, she gets a title shot. And Britt was very mad about this. She said Tony ruined Thanksgiving, and now he's not invited to the Christmas party. And Tony Schiavone, just being his totally awesome, gives no fuck self, after having been completely shamed here and reprimanded by Britt with his head sagged down toward the ground, just goes, are we doing the DMD thing? And Britt goes, no, Tony, we are not doing the DMD. You ruined it. And the only thing I wrote down at the end of this was, fuck the Riho match. The real story here is a future intergender showdown between Tony Schiavone and Britt Baker. That's your real program. And if Tony knows what's good for him, he will not let a woman tear him down and shit test him going forward. He needs to stand up to Britt and put her in her place like a real man. Or better yet, just have Adam Cole kick his ass. Then we had this really strange match that I'm still trying to wrap my head around where they found this guy from. It is Bryan Danielson taking on... hold on. I want to make sure I get this guy's name right. Colt Cabana?
Hey, Colt Cabana, how you doing?
Apparently Punk knows him. Guess he has a podcast or something. Anyway, Danielson pretty much kicked his ass. Somehow this Colt Cabana fella got in some offense, which was a total abomination. And the whole nonsense from Excalibur about how these two have history with one another. Like, apparently they've wrestled each other something like 5 times before, one of which resulted in a 60-minute time limit draw. Pfft. Only in your fucking figure, Fed, Excalibur. I don't buy it. 60 minutes. Give me a break. Dude couldn't even last 5 minutes in this match with Bryan before getting destroyed. Anyway, the important thing here is that Danielson won, after of which he shamed the Chicago crowd for booing him after having given him a warm ovation for his return. Speaking of nostalgia, right, MJF? And this all brought out Hangman Page to try and challenge Danielson to a title match tonight, but Danielson called him a coward for wanting to defend his title right after Danielson already wrestled a grueling 5-minute squash match. Who the hell does Adam Page think he is? Some world champion. But he tells Danielson that he is not leaving Chicago without a fight, and he will even give Danielson the first shot. So Danielson and Page do the brief scuffle. Page goes to do the buckshot lariat, but Danielson ducks out, and we edge one step closer to that showdown. Of course, in the meantime, I have to sit through another Danielson Job Order TV match, but I guess I can look past that. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't think Danielson ever mentioned who he's facing next. All I remember him saying is that they are in Atlanta next week, and he's going to face whichever Dark Order member is from Atlanta. So apparently even Danielson doesn't give a shit which guy he's facing. God, this faction sucks. And that brings us to our main event 8-man tag match with Malachi Black, Andrade El Idolo, and FTR taking on Death Triangle and Cody Rhodes. And yes, I did take note of the fact that there was a team in this match known as Death Triangle, and they were indeed wrestling on the babyface team here. Yeah, but I also remember complaining last week about how the Dark Order were babyfaces, yet one of their top ringleaders still goes by the name of Evil Uno. So it really isn't all that shocking to me. And I think the best way I can sum this up is with two main points. Number one, Cody is the worst babyface of all time. And number two, the Lucha Bros ruin pretty much every match they're involved with at this point. Look, I'll start with the Cody thing because he's a... I don't even know how to put it at this point. He is a sheer walking slapstick in and of himself. So, the big spot with him early on was the deal where he throws the weight belt into the crowd, and as you'd expect, because it's Chicago, whoever got a hold of it ended up throwing it back over the safety rail, which visibly pissed off both Cody and JR. And I guess Andrade got mad too because he immediately ran over and grabbed the belt and then threw it underneath the ring. All the while, you've got Cody standing on the apron with his hands up in the air looking at the fans like, are you kidding me? No, Cody. No. The truth is, you're in Chicago. You already know you got like 80 to 85% of the crowd working against you now. What exactly were you expecting, bud? A standing ovation? How delusional can you be? And of course, as per expectations of much of Cody's matches now, he was vehemently and passionately booed with just about everything he did in this match. And not to give him a rough time, because again, I like Cody. I don't have anything against him. But I'm also not going to distort the reality of the situation he's put himself in now. But he looked like shit in this match. I don't know if he was hurt. I don't know if he was just thrown off with all the crowd booing or if he just wasn't having a good night overall, but everything he did in this match just looked awful. I can't remember if it was the first time or second time he got tagged in, but he got in like maybe one offensive move before he ended up tagging back out and pretty much sat outside the ring for like the next 5 minutes selling and doing nothing. And then there was the Lucha Bros, which... I mean, I can't even really say that anything they did in this match was bad. It's just the fact that everything they do makes zero psychological sense at all. And I just got totally fed up with this by the end. For the first part of the match, they were perfectly fine when they were actually tagging and actually trying to do something resembling tag wrestling. And but the end, you fast forward to the last 5 or so minutes, and they're just randomly doing double team moves. They're not tagging in and out. Aubrey's just letting all this shit break down and completely giving up trying to take any form of control, including the blatant spot where Tully and Arn just get in the ring. Yes, Tully and Arn climb up on the apron, they get inside the ring, they tease a fight. I think eventually you had Jose in there trying to stir up shit, and what does Aubrey do? She just stands there. Like, oh, whatever shall I do? Totally fucking ridiculous. And like I said, by the end, everyone's just randomly doing stuff. It's total pandemonium and mayhem. No one's tagging. I just threw up my hands and said, fuck it, I'm over it. Do your stupid finish and get it done and over with. And I have no idea what happened. Somehow Andrade spiked Pac with a DDT after Malachi missed him in the face, and that was that. At least Malachi actually made contact with the miss this time, because he misses like 55% of the time. But just a total chaotic mess. It was going relatively well until the breakdown at the end where everyone just started doing moves, and by that point I just gave up paying attention. I hate this kind of crash TV, no logic wrestling. And if anyone out there is going to try and rationalize it by bringing up the six man from the NWA TBS Superstation show last week with Flair and the Andersons, my immediate response is wrong. Because at least that match was enforced as an actual tag match from start to finish, and they did one heat spot at the end to have the heels win. This was like the polar opposite of that match. Started off as a tag match, quickly descended into every AEW multi-man clusterfuck you've ever seen, where guys just do whatever they want, no enforcement of rules, guys going in and out of the ring whenever they want, managers running blatant interference in the ring, just way too much shit to keep track of. It sucks, it's stupid, and it happens in virtually every multi-man AEW TV match I see. I hated this match. That's fine, because everyone else is going to praise it to the moon anyway, so what does my opinion matter anyway? And kind of a real bummer to go out on a show that I actually found genuinely enjoyable. I mean, I had some minor gripes about the MJF Punk promo exchange, but I can at least look past that and say overall, the delivery of the material was good, and they covered a decent amount of ground there. I cannot say the same for the main event, and despite my continual disapproval of anything involving the Lucha Bros at this point, the Cody Rhodes thing is really just starting to generate go-away heat with me. Like, I was willing to make a joke out about it, or make a joke out of it at first, and I wrote an entire article on the whole artificial reality he's living in, and I still think it's one of the better pieces that I've written about, because it is coming from a sense of, genuine psychological intrigue, but watching this actually develop and culminate on television, it's just awful. It's not like Jeff Jarrett level territory go away heat with me, because I actually think Cody actually has more redeeming qualities than Jeff Jarrett, believe it or not. But the more I watch him, the more I hear the reactions, the more I start to understand the comparisons. And of course, the rest of the show had the usual pros and cons strewn throughout. The Paige Danielson build is solid. The women's match on the show was pretty good. The Dante heel turn, probably not paid off the way I would have done it, but something that I think will be good for him going forward. And aside from my horrid attempts at hyping up Sting versus Billy Gunn, I actually do kind of dig the Gun Club Darby and Sting feud, even if it's just like a placeholder thing to give Darby something to do. So, usual good stuff, bad stuff show, but definitely more bad than good. Definitely more good than bad, which is always a plus. But that main event, just, Jesus Christ, everything you need to know about AEW matches in a nutshell, just summed up in that complete clusterfuck of an 8-man tag match. But that's okay, because now we can detox from that by talking about some of the retro shows here. NWA World Championship Wrestling from November 23rd, 1985. And we started things with a brief minute recap of how the show went off air last week. Of course, for y'all that need a refresher, the big angle at the end of last week's program with Flair, Tully, and the Anderson brothers teasing to brawl with Magnum TA and Dusty, and right before all four got in the ring, the Road Warriors ran out to even the score. And that was the point where the heels said, "Fuck that, we're out. We do not do fair fights, brother." But the one thing I totally neglected to talk about in that final segment was the clear and evident visual of Hawk tripping over the ropes trying to get into the ring. You would think a guy like me would have picked up on a detail like that, but somehow I missed that one. Good thing we got a replay, though, because it was glorious. Terry Taylor versus Black Cat was the opener for this week, and while it is too easy for me to make a passing joke on Black Cat, I will just leave it at this. There was nothing cat-like about anything he did in this match. Terry won with a superplex, which in the year 1985 was still viewed as something truly special. Fast forward a decade or so later, it is now a transitional move or false finish in a mid-card pay-per-view match that literally nobody pops for. So then we get the follow-up with Tony and David Crockett basically doing a deep dive into the Flair Dusty story. And, they essentially go back and forth for a while, talking about the idea that they're disappointed and sickened with Flair's actions. They say his actions since the Dusty attack are unlike anything we have seen from him at any point in his career. And like great babyface commentators, they name drop a couple examples like what happened on last week's show in the Championship Challenge series, where Flair committed the dastardly and devastating act of, what, you ask? He tripped Pistol Pez Watley and held his feet down so Ole could pin him. The rad bastard. I mean, that's almost as sickening as watching something like Steve Austin break Pillman's ankle. Holding someone's foot down so your partner can pin him. Who the hell does Flair think he is? And for those of you younglings out there, yes, professional wrestling used to be taken this seriously at one point in time. And, of course, they follow this up with showing the deal in the cage where the Andersons are holding down Dusty so Flair could do the leg drop off the ropes and kayfabe destroy Dusty's ankle. Speaking of people taking wrestling seriously at one point, how about the visual of fans trying to swarm ringside and literally try to kill Flair and the Andersons? Now in modern wrestling, you see an angle like this go down on TV and it's a commercial break spot. But by far, the best part of this whole segment was the sit down with Bill Apter and Flair, where you got Dusty doing the pre-recorded babyface promo on the monitor, and as he's running down Flair, he gets out of his chair and starts doing the Raging Heat promo on Dusty, and Bill's looking at offset going, we got to take a break, we're out of time this week. All the while, there's Flair screaming at a blank TV monitor while Tony and David are just having a ball mocking the sheer absurdity of the whole thing. And then, of course, to round everything out, you've got the Dusty promo with David from Worldwide Wrestling, where he is issuing that Nature Boys in risky business. It may just so happen to have a devil inside their boot. And if there is a devil in that boot, if there is a demon in that boot, that's on you, Flair. And we will become World Heavyweight Champion for the third time. And when we all come together in the gathering, if you will, Dusty will be World Champion, Daddy. What a fucking cat. So after that incredibly phenomenal series of packages and pay-per-view hype that you could possibly ask for, they followed this up with a Don Kernodle-Don Turner match. This was not as good as the Dusty Rhodes Ric Flair pre-tapes. Shocker, I know. I actually did get a kick out of the spot here in like the first 20 seconds of the match, though, where Kernodle goes to give Turner a single body slam on the mat, and the ref immediately jumps in and goes, "You want to give it up?" I mean, I know there's some wacky finishes on this show thus far, but I think even the NWA jobbers have a little more in the tank than taking a mere scoop slam on the mat. Then we had the Barbarian taking on a man whose name I am not making up here, Stony Burke. Not something to make the guy look even semi-credible, like Stone Bowl Burke. No, just Stony Burke. Well, the Barbarian crushed this dude in about the amount of time it took for Burke to come up with that lame ring name. Then we got a Flair promo, and he is basically out there to admonish Schiavone and Crockett for calling in to question his credibility and his actions from earlier. And just so you know how the tides were changing in wrestling, just with faces and heels in the year 1985, you could actively hear fans in the background through this promo cheering on Flair while he was reprimanding the babyface commentators. And of course, he had all the women cheering him, and by the end, he brought up that he was styling and profiling in blue cashmere. And best part of this promo was right at the end where Flair caps off by giving people the big woo, and then Tony goes to take it to the break, and then Flair comes right back for one final woo, with Tony completely no-selling and just holding up the mic for Flair. It's just like, I don't know, it's the subtle things that make the big difference on this show. And also a strong quality that all major organizations should take note of. You can do wacky comedy without making it come off as childish, awkward, and moronic. Doesn't have to be overly complex. Superstar Billy Graham wrestled Tony Zane in a match. Graham out there sporting the patented red and yellow attire, which even the announcers took note of at one point. If only they knew what the next few years would have in store. And I wrote this down. If there was ever a perfect pairing of two dudes that would pull off the before and after comparisons in those garbage weight loss programs they advertise on TV, Tony Zane and Billy Graham are the perfect guys for those pictures. And of course, as Graham scooped that guy off the ground and held him up in the bear hug, Zane lasted all of about 1.5 seconds before he gave up. Poor guy. For our Championship Challenge Series match of the week, we have the Ragin' Bull taking on Buddy Landau. And after last week's fantastic 6-man championship series deal, I was all for another one of these deals on this week's show. And while I would not say this topped the previous week's match, it was a very enjoyable match from bell to bell. Most of that thanks to Buddy Landau. Buddy Landau was fucking phenomenal in this match. First thing he does from the beginning bell is he turns to David Crockett and goes, "Hey, David, it's nice Jim Crockett Promotions finally found me a semi-worthy opponent, but of all people they could find, did it have to be a Mexican? You gotta be ribbing." And without hesitation, Fernandez decks Landau with a back elbow, and Landau goes out and shields himself behind J.J. Dillon almost immediately. And while I would love to say that our pussified culture in 2021 would allow for heel lines like this in the business today, unfortunately that seems highly improbable. And of course, like a minute after Landau gets back in the ring and Fernandez is in the ready stance, Landau backs up to the corner, he turns to the ref and goes, "Is this karate or wrestling?" So, of course, they're having this match, and, Manny's just out-wrestling Landau left and right. Landau is doing every stalling tactic and heel trick in the book to get under his skin. I got a laugh out of this spot, too, where Landau's on the outside talking with JJ while clearly Manny's in complete control of the match. And Landau stops talking to JJ so he can turn to the ref and goes, "Hey, ask him if he's had enough yet." Just sitting there watching this, like, what a fucking asshole. So they end up going to commercial with Manny totally dominating the match. And when they come back, they end up doing a spot where Landau takes the ref so JJ can get involved and distract Manny to give Landau the advantage. There is, I guess I would call it a turning point where basically the match went from a moderately fun TV match to a somewhat serious upper card pay-per-view caliber match. I have no idea how this happened. And I even went back and rewound it just to see if JJ might have accidentally caught Manny in the forehead with his ring or something. But there's a random point in this match where Manny just starts gushing blood from his forehead. And I have no idea what the hell happened. But the fans caught on to it, and you could just immediately hear the temperament in the room change on a dime. It went from having a few passive laughs at Landau being a total goofball heel to pretty much people valiantly getting behind Manny to make his comeback at the end. I guess something in the business we now refer to as fortuitous juice. And, of course, Landau's wrestling Manny down on the mat. He's got blood draped across his shoulder and chest. Just a total attitude change from that blood spot onwards. And they're doing stuff back and forth for a while. Manny gets a couple near falls toward the end. And all of a sudden, the bell rings. And the ref goes, "We're out of time, guys. 20-minute draw. It's over." All the while I'm sitting there like, 20 minutes? Was that match really 20 minutes? Because if it was, I totally lost track of time in it. Sure as fuck, I went back and checked the timestamp. The match started at approximately the 32-minute mark and concluded at somewhere around the 47-minute mark. And you factor in the commercial break in there, give it 3 or 4 minutes, it rounds out to about a 20-minute draw. So, like, the fact that I got completely lost in that whole timeline of the match just goes to show how compelling it was. Like, there was a part of me that thought early on in the match, it's like, well, wait, both of these guys are wrestling at Starrcade, and they're in pretty significant matches on that show. So, how exactly do you book a finish here that make both guys come out looking good? Well, suffice it to say, a 20-minute time limit draw was not my number one thought, but boy did it work. And, I know the Buddy Landau thing kind of fizzles out of the equation not too long from now, but God, I wish we get a few more matches like this on TV for this retro series, because fuck, Buddy Landau was so entertaining in this match. Oh man, I might need to go back in my tape archives and watch some more of his work, because he was amazing here. And of course, right afterwards, you have Terry Taylor putting over both guys at the booth with hyping up his national heavyweight title match with Landau for Starrcade, which, well, I won't spoil it for now. I'll talk about that on Monday when we do the recap of the pay-per-view, but the match does have a very peculiar finish decision, and especially when you factor in all the fallout going into January of '86. And again, if you are aware of Buddy's timeline in the business at this point, you probably know at least a little bit of what I'm talking about. Black Bart versus Rocky King. Just a quick, boring squash to put Bart over, and really didn't write anything else down. But again, that's primarily to spotlight him before his bull rope match with Ron Bass for the pay-per-view, which... Okay, it is entirely possible that I may have just reimagined Bass's promo from last week's show, but did he not just cut the exact same promo from last week here? I could have sworn he went into a 2-minute tirade about the dangers of the bull rope gimmick, and lo and behold, here we are this week, and he's talking about the dangers of the bull rope gimmick. I guess it hammers home, hey, this match is going to be bloody and brutal, but when you factor in the fact that Ron Bass and Black Bart are in it, yeah, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised when I watch the show again. It's been, what did I say earlier? Like at least 15 years since I've watched this show. And the mere fact that I totally forgot this match ever happened, and it doesn't give me high hopes from the jump. Had a quick Road Warriors promo where they were spitting and spewing verbiage about the Horsemen and the upcoming tag match for Philly. And I'm sitting there watching this promo, and the only thing I could think is, I never bought into the whole masking deal from the onset of the pandemic, but sitting there watching Hawk and Animal hacking up spit and projectile substances all over the goddamn place, maybe those mask mandates weren't such a bad idea after all. There was also a line in here from Hawk, I think it was, where he just goes, after the Road Warriors are done dealing with Flair, Tully, and the Andersons, they're all going to look like someone trying to put out a wildfire with an axe. Yeah, I don't know about that one either, Walter. Billy Jack Haynes took on one of the Jeffers brothers. I think it was Jim. There was one thing I took note of in this match, and that was the small child in the crowd that really wanted to see Billy Jack Haynes DDT this motherfucker. And, well, Christmas didn't come early for this poor child, because we got no such thing in this match. Talk about giving the people what they want. Well, at least Billy Jack could make it up by cutting a redeeming promo afterwards, right? Yeah, not so much. Well, all joking aside, at least we know Billy's dad is doing all right. I think I recall vaguely from last week's show, he said his father wasn't doing all that well health-wise, but things have seemed to turn around for the better this week, so that's good. We had a 6-man with Ron Bass, Pez Whatley, and the Italian Stallion taking on Carl Styles, Kent Glover, and Larry Clark. And this is mostly just a piss break opportunity for Tony and David to read some fan mail and give the undercard faces a win. And we follow this up with a promo from NWA Junior Heavyweight Champion Denny Brown. Who? Denny Brown, you say? Well, I can confidently say that I remembered practically nothing about Denny Brown and or anything involving the NWA Junior Heavyweight title or its title lineage. And based on the 2-paragraph wiki page for Denny regarding his entire professional wrestling career and the brief description of his title reign, it does not sound like many other people remember it or him either. And I can also confidently say that his promo ability is right about on par with something you would expect out of anybody in modern wrestling today. Perhaps this is where the Darby Allins and the Jungle Boys of the world are getting their promo inspiration from. Meanwhile, you've got guys like Ricky Starks and MJF that are watching Rock and Ric Flair promos. So, we clearly see what the priorities are. And, well, I guess my complaint from last week about not seeing Sam Houston up until this point, despite the fact that he's wrestling Crusher Khrushchev at the pay-per-view for the vacant Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight title, well, we got a Sam Houston match this week. And he was taking on the Golden Terror. Match itself didn't have a whole lot going on aside from Flair coming out to do color commentary. And the big spot at the end was Terror and Houston doing the head collision spot. And while the ref was checking on Terror, Flair runs over, yanks Houston out from under the ring, gives him a vertical suplex on the concrete floor, and the ref turns around and ends up counting him out. And of course, Flair's doing the super proud heat promo to close out the show, and the announcers are continuing to exert their dismay of our NWA World's Champion. And it was a good hard sell for the Starrcade pay-per-view. Although it certainly doesn't put Sam Houston in a particularly good position going into the pay-per-view, but I guess we'll see what happens there. It was an alright show, though. The Landau Raging Bull match is a must-see just for the sheer entertainment of Buddy Landau. The Dusty Flair stuff was absolute pay-per-view hype perfection and pretty much everything you could possibly have asked for, and quite frankly, everything that I wish the Kenny Omega Hangman Page hype was, but was not. Everything else was kind of hit and miss here. Promos were a little less than stellar this week, and I guess if I had one major complaint, like especially when you factor in that this was the go-home show, it felt like there was a lot of talent left off the show. I'm trying to recall most of the Starrcade matches based on what Jim Crockett announced the previous week, but fuck it. I'll just look up the card real quick. Let me hold up. Let's see here. No, I don't want to use Wikipedia. That's going to give me spoilers. I just want the card. Let's see. What does Cage Match have? Do they have spoilers? No, good. It's just the card for both locations. All right. Let's start with the Greensboro Show. So, for the go-home show here, we did not have physical appearances from the Russians, the Rock and Roll Express, Tully Blanchard, and Magnum TA. And for the Omni, Let's see. We did not have physical appearances from Abdullah, either of the Anderson brothers, Jimmy Valiant, and Jim Cornette, or the Midnight Express. Wow. That's a lot of key talent, too. That is a very strange decision in the taping schedule. Leaving off a good chunk of your featured talent on the go-home show. But like I said, I am looking forward to going back and watching that show again over the weekend and just seeing how much I actually remember about it overall. Obviously, I remember a lot of the Flair-Dusty match pretty well, but everything else I'm a little flaky on. Watching it on Peacock in better quality, though, will be an interesting touch. That all said, that'll take us over to the November 27th, 1982 edition of World Class Championship Wrestling. And the big theme for this show was all built around the story of David Von Erich avenging the Great Kabuki on behalf of Kerry. And we did open with a rather unintentionally funny David Von Erich promo where I think the best way I can sum it up is he originated the legendary Owen Hart heel promo on Brett, where he said something to the effect of, Kabuki rearranged Kerry's knee by stomping him inside the knee. And while there's a part of me that just wondered to myself, it is a tape show. Why not just reshoot it? The other part of me was like, you know what? Fuck it. I miss these kind of off-the-cuff promos in wrestling. So I'm glad they didn't cut that out. First match was Kerry Von Erich taking on Captain Frank Dusek. Very basic squash deal. Kerry ended up going over with the discus punch at the end, which Dusek could not have sold any better if he tried. And then we get a 30-second post-match promo from Kerry where he just basically said he's gunning for Flair. His knuckles are still a bit sore, but Flair's the top priority. By the way, he was totally out of breath for this promo. And the match went maybe like 2 minutes at the most. So, Von Erich family working hard as usual. Then we had Bugsy Mcgraw taking on Wild Bill Irwin. I'm not going to recite everything I've said about the last several Bugsy Mcgraw matches, but if you have never seen a Bugsy Mcgraw match, I highly encourage you to check one out because once you see him in action, you never unsee it. He is a total whack job cartoon Three Stooge character come to life. God love him, can't wrestle his way out of a paper bag, but the dude was over like you would not believe to this Dallas crowd. I hate to even attempt to make modern day comparisons because in no way am I trying to imply that these guys are on an equal playing field in terms of star power, but Bugsy is very much like a contemporary version of Orange Cassidy, minus the talent and credibility. But like the match early on just consisted of Irwin trying to mindfuck around Bugsy. There was a spot where Bugsy went over in the corner to headbutt the turnbuckle pad. Like 20 seconds later, Irwin tries to do the same thing, and then Bugsy comes up from behind and gives him the final blow before Irwin takes the big bump. But they end up fighting out onto the apron toward the end, and the ref ends up throwing the match out for a double disqualification, which I'm pretty sure they did this exact same finish in Bugsy's previous match with Checkmate. And spoiler alert here, but this was not the only non-clean finish we got on the show. In fact, the only actual clean finish in the program was, in fact, the opener. Now that I'm skimming back over my notes here. The things that totally would not fly in the business today. So, remember what I said at the beginning about how David had a not-so-great promo on Kabuki where he said he stomped Kerry's knee into his knee? Well, he made up for it with a promo that was 10 times better. Mercer took a road trip out to David's farm. They're hanging out with Sissy, his mare. Beautiful horse, by the way. I had to write that down. But David basically just vowed to destroy Kabuki's face and pretty much urged him to not get in the ring with him if he knows what's best for him. And this promo was delivered in such an authentic and forceful manner, a totally different demeanor in the Von Erich family of what we've seen thus far. And right at the very end, David and Mercer are trying to wrap things up, and they just go from like this real intense, heated moment to just casually talking to Sissy and telling her, say goodbye to the camera. Great stuff. And of course, we follow that with Gary Hart doing the bullshit story about how the supposed $12,500 bounty was not a real bounty, but it was money that Flair needed so that he could afford a quality Cadillac station wagon. Of which we clearly know that the only possible way to get a Cadillac station wagon in the States is in Dallas, Texas, of all places. Yeah, not somewhere like, I don't know, say Detroit? I smell a rat there. Never trusted Gary Hart. Then we had Al Madrid taking on Killer Tim Brooks in a match that, if I'm being nice, I would say was passably boring. However, the grouchy side of me, after having to sit through 10 minutes of this boring, drawn-out, nothing-happening match, only to have it end up in a time limit draw, that one did not sit well with me. I can do a 20-minute time limit draw with Buddy Landau and Manny Fernandez because they actually did something interesting in that 20-minute timestamp. Madrid and Brooks did nothing in this 10-minute match. And this is coming from somebody that really does not like spot fest matches. When I tell you that nothing happened in this match, I'm not exaggerating. And the problem is I have extremely little knowledge about Al Madril's career. And when I think about the fact that I don't hear a lot of experts in the business really ever mention his name or talk about him to any great length, I have to presume that there wasn't a whole lot to write home about in his career. And like I'm sitting there watching him do all this mostly dull chain wrestling against Brooks, and like he's essentially working as a heel for most of it. This just didn't work. I like me some Killer Tim Brooks, though. I think I just mentioned him in one of my recent AEW reports, didn't I? Can't remember what match I was referencing. Oh yeah, that's right. I remember. I was talking about the Butcher. Kind of gave him like that modern Killer Tim Brooks physical appearance or resemblance. Anyway, main event for the night was the Great Kabuki taking on David Von Erich, which is a very enjoyable main event, discounting the lame DQ finish at the end, but I'll get to that in a minute. We got maybe like 2 or 3 minutes into this before David was completely covered in Kabuki's green mist and just had blood dripping from his forehead. Just his face looked like a Christmas tree ornament at one point. We did have a good chunk of this match feature the dreaded midsection claw of doom, where David just kind of had Kabuki pinned on the mat by applying pressure to the stomach region. A move that, again, totally would not work in 2021, but in the year 1982, legitimately had people screaming and on the edge of their seats that hoping Kabuki would either pass out or tap out. Good Lord. David did some selling at one point after Kabuki gave him a series of thrust kicks, and David was kind of stumbling, bumbling, and fumbling outside the ring. We eventually got Arman Hussein on the apron. David put him in a rear naked choke. Kabuki stalked him from behind, tried to take advantage, but David quickly fought him off and teased he was going to put him away when who should run in at the end but the Magic Dragon for the 3rd consecutive fucked finish on the show. Well, to be fair, 2nd fucked finish if we're going by DQ policy, but 3 if we are counting non-clean decisive finishes. And the heels did get a momentary bit of heat on David before Kerry ran down to send the heels packing. And, Obviously, if you're going to do a match like this, yeah, it probably would be in best interest of booking both guys to make sure they didn't have to do a clean job. So you were probably going to have to do a DQ or a draw finish. Yeah, but like when 3 of your already scheduled 4 matches are booked to have non-decisive finishes, you don't think you maybe want to reconsider that a little bit on the formatting? And of course, David did the fiery babyface promo at the booth before the close to the show and promised he was going to put closure to Kabuki and he was going to make him bleed. So, there you go. Fun 45-minute show. Lame finishes aside, decent programming. The main event match was very good, and the promo hype throughout the night to build up to it was very well done. Again, if you have not already, go check out the last couple shows I've done on World Class where I talk pretty substantial detail about David, and I just kind of go into a little bit about what could have been with him. Just a truly remarkable athlete and star that I think really could have done greater things in the business had the tragedy of '84 not occur. But, of course, you can say that about most of the Von Erich family, but I won't get into that right now. Guys, if you want to stay posted for all future FSWR content, smash the subscribe button, like the show, and leave a comment down below to share your thoughts on any or all material discussed in today's episode. Monday's show is going to be a special edition where, again, we're going to do the usual of running down AEW Rampage and NWA Power, but we will close out the night by recapping the Starrcade 85 show from top to bottom to relive some of pro wrestling's glory days. And definitely looking forward to that one, and I hope you guys come back and check out that show, because should be a lot of fun. Until then, all, take care. Peace out.